Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto died and returned stronger as the Jubi Jinchuriki Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Naruto Uzumaki. Number 1 Hyperactive Ninja. Child of Prophecy. Reincarnation of Asura Otsutsuki. And Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tailed Fox, Kurama. Well, that is, in a matter of minutes, that would be now Jinchuriki of the Jubi. That is, if he survives, that is. During the final battle between good and evil. Goddess vs. mortal men. Naruto and Sasuke Uchiha was about to seal Kagaya Otsutsuki, the mother of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of 6 paths. When the sealing jutsu was about to seal Kagaya, the jutsu backfired on them and latched itself onto Naruto. Thus, his predicament right now. AAAAHHHGGGG. Naruto. Hold on. Don't you die on me. Shouted Kurama. Kurama. I can't, it hurts so much, said Naruto. Goddammit. Naruto. You can do this. We can do this. I'll share your burden. I'll pull the Jubi into me. Just don't die. Then let's do this Kurama. Right. RAAAAAAHHHHHGGGG. RAAAAAAHHHHHGGGG. Outside of this, Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi could only watch their blonde teammates scream into the heavens, unable to do anything but pray to Kami that Naruto could pull it through. Then the unthinkable happened. Naruto's chakra skyrocketed to unimaginable proportions. Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi could feel the gargantuan pressure push them down emanating from the blonde. The very air they breathe was saturated with chakra. The skies then darken, the winds howl in anger, the very earth where they stand was shaking. And then silence. Their blonde teammate dropped to the ground with a loud thump. Sakura ran to Naruto, along with Kakashi and Sasuke. Sakura then turned over Naruto to his back and put his head on her lap, before she used her mystical palm technique to check Naruto for any damages or abnormalities. To her horror, their blonde friend and teammate is dead. Darkness. Only darkness he could see. Not even his hands, feet, or body he could see. Where am I? Why am I here? What the hell happened? You died, Naruto. That is why you are here, said a disembodied voice. I died, but Kurama. Me and Kurama, answered Naruto. Yes, you and Kurama. You saved them. You both saved the whole elemental nations from a fate worse than death. Hey, if he was here, he would be cursing his heart out. Knowing he saved the very nations that imprisoned him. Damn straight, answered a deep and thundering voice. Kurama, I'm glad you're still alive. I thought you'd be released now that I'm dead and all, said Naruto. Same here, Kit. But enough of this. Why don't you show yourself, San, said Kurama. Hagoromo Gigi is here, asked Naruto, still can't see anything. My, impatient as always, Kurama. And yes, Naruto, I'm here, and I owe you both an explanation, answered Hagoromo. Explanation? For what? Asked Naruto. For starters, the reason why you can't see is because your eyes are still adapting. And your body is changing, answered Hagoromo. Adapting. Changing. What do you mean? I'll explain it in due time. But first, Kurama, how are you feeling? Better than ever, San. Better than ever, answered Kurama, feeling his newfound power coursing through his veins. Why, what's the matter with Kurama? Asked Naruto, still trying to open his eyes. There's nothing wrong with him, Naruto. Far from it actually. Out with it, San. You owe us both an explanation on why you pull us here. Fine. Can an old man have fun for once in his eternal life? Quote. Never mind. Anyways, the reason you are here Naruto, along with Kurama, is that I want you both to meet someone. Who is it? Asked Kurama, with Naruto nodding to him. Naruto could hear something walking up to them. Judging from the sound of the footsteps, it was a person. The said person stopped walking and then it spoke, "Hello Naruto, Kurama. It's nice to finally meet you two in person. Hagoromo holds you both in high regards." Naruto raised an eyebrow, despite not being able to see anything for a while. Hi, who might you be? Oh, forgive me, Naruto. My name is God, former leader of the Judeo-Christian religion. God, former leader of the Judeo-Christian religion. Father of the angels, fallen angels, and devils. Towering at 6'2", has deep sky blue eyes, alabaster white skin, and long blonde hair that was tied in a ponytail. He wears a white business suit with gold trimmings and gold tie. God, as in Kami. And what do you mean former? Asked Naruto. God could only chuckle before answering, close, but no. Just God. And former because, for the lack of better word, I died. Now that was a surprise. You died? How? God sighed tiredly before answering, war. War could do that to a person, even for the likes of me. Naruto was silent for a moment before an aura of maturity engulfed the blonde. He then asked, explain. I like this kid, thought God, before answering, you see, it all started when I casted out the angels that opposed my teachings. My sons and daughters, my creations, they allowed themselves to be corrupted. Then came the angels who allowed themselves to fall from their sins. Hence the birth of fallen angels. The ones who fall from their sins are called fallen angels. The ones who I casted out for opposing me are called devils. He have this faraway look. Before continuing, I thought we could live in peace, but their sins had grown into something worse. Pride, greed, lust, gluttony, sloth, envy, and wrath. Those 7 deadly sins grew so much in them, they could not control it anymore. Hence, the war started. His face was now a look of sadness and regret before he added, at first it was just us angels and devils. After years of fighting, the fallen angels joined the fray. During those years, the fallen angels called themselves the Grigori. Led by one of my fallen sons, Azazel. With the devils, they were led by the 4 great Satans. The war lasted for many, many years, until that fateful day. It was supposed to be me against my eldest son, but I didn't count on bringing the other 3. We battled for days, trading blows after blows, blades after blades. In the end, I won against them. But the wounds I gained from the fight were too great for me. After I transferred my leadership to my successor, I finally succumbed to my injuries. I'm sorry it had to go that way, God. But forgive when I say that, it was all your fault in the first place. I know. If it wasn't for Hagoromo, I wouldn't even think of it that as was my fault. So, why do you want to meet us? I'm sure meeting us isn't the only reason you're here, said Naruto. You're right, that's not the only reason. I'm here because I'm asking for your help in bringing peace into my world. Naruto was stunned. A deity was asking for his help. A fucking deity. Me. Why me? Of all the people in the world to choose from, why me? Because you, Naruto, is special. Believe it or not, you're incorruptible. You make friends wherever you went. Heck, you can even turn the ones who have fallen, back to good. So that's why I chose you, Naruto. There's no one better than you. You are the key to make my world a better place. Naruto was in deep thought by this point. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. On the bright side, he could start anew in this new world. Sure, he has to gain new friends, not that it would be a problem for the blonde. But what about his friends here? Will he would be able to return? What about his dream of being Hokage? There's so much to think about, and so little time. It's now or never. Leave, for the betterment of a new world. Or stay. There's only one question he would be asking, and that would be, if I agreed to this, will I ever go back here in the elemental nations? I'm afraid not, Naruto. You would be staying there forever, not unless you mastered your powers, said Hagoromo, while looking at him with sympathy. Oh, Naruto looked down in sadness. He was leaving his home, his friends, his loved ones, to a world that is needed of saving. A world that's in need of Naruto Uzumaki. I'm sorry, Naruto. You are the only one who could save this world from its own destruction. Which is why Kurama is here to accompany you on your mission to bring peace into this world. From that mere sentence, the blonde brightens up before he heard his partner and friend said, "It would be my pleasure accompanying you in this new adventure, Naruto. Besides, this could be fun." Naruto smiled at his partner and friend, before raising up his hand and balled it into a fist. Kurama smiled before he too, bringing up his own hand and bumped fist with Naruto. "I take it's a yes then?" asked God with a smile. "Yes, God. I'll do whatever it takes to bring peace into this world," said Naruto, before Hagoromo suddenly spoke. "Now that's out of the way. Naruto, it's time to open your eyes." Naruto raised again an eyebrow before he tried to open his eyes. To his surprise, his eyelids slowly opened and for the first time in his life, everything was clear. Like he has perfect eyesight. He could see things as far as his eye could see and still he could see it clearly. No blurriness. To make it better, his body felt amazing. Powerful, even. He then looked at Hagoromo and asked, "Why do I feel like there's something different about me, Hagoromo Gigi?" Hagoromo smiled at Naruto before saying, "Look at your eyes, Naruto." Naruto widened his eyes before Hagoromo conjured a mirror before giving it to Naruto. Naruto looked at his reflection and his jaws dropped to the ground. Hard. How? You're the new Jubi Jinchuriki, Naruto. And Kurama is the new Jubi. Hearing this, Naruto suddenly snapped his head to Kurama's direction. And to his surprise, Kurama really is the new Jubi. Gone was his 9 tails. Now, it's 10 tails. His size grew even more gigantic. His very being was radiating power like no other. And his eyes are the same with Naruto. "I can't believe it. I'm actually the new Jubi Jinchuriki," said Naruto in awe. "You control the most powerful dojutsu in the elemental nations, Naruto. I trust you will be responsible in using this," explained Hagoromo. Naruto straightened up and once again, gone was the knucklehead ninja. In was the veteran Naruto of the 4th Shinobi World War. "I understand Hagoromo Gigi. Now, I'll be explaining what your dojutsu could do. You basically control every Rinnegan and Sharingan techniques. Even the Mangekyo Sharingan. Your body also adjusted to Kurama's more potent chakra, so you might want to train your body again to get used to it." Naruto nodded at Hagoromo's explanation before Hagoromo gestured for him to come closer. Hagoromo then raised his hand and touched Naruto's forehead before saying, "Now, I'm going to transfer every jutsu in every element I know to you. Use it well." Before Naruto was flooded with information. "Son of a bitch. Feels like the time I accidentally dispelled 20 clones when I was training with Pervy Sage." After the knowledge transfer was done, Naruto was approached by God, then he spoke, "Naruto, before we transport you to this new world, I would like you to meet somebody." He then gestured Naruto, along with Kurama and Hagoromo to follow him. They walked for a while, before they saw at the distance a flying red dragon. "Huh, that's new." They stopped walking before the red dragon descended from its flight, landing in front of them. "Naruto, Kurama, Hagoromo, I want you all to meet Didrake, the Red Dragon Emperor," said God, gesturing them to Didrake. "Greetings, I'm Didrake, the Red Dragon Emperor," introduced Didrake. "Hello. Hey. Sup." Naruto, Kurama, and God stared at Hagoromo with deadpanned expressions. Hagoromo could only say, "What?" Sighing tiredly, God then explained, "Naruto, as a gift for accepting my favor, Didrake will also accompany you as your own sacred gear, the boosted gear. As of this moment, not only you are the new Jinchuriki of the Jubi. You are now the new Sekurut." Didrake let out a primal roar before bowing to Naruto, saying, "It will be an honor, fighting alongside such a powerful warrior of your caliber, Naruto. What say you, partner?" Naruto bowed also to Didrake before answering, "The honor is mine, Didrake. I hope we can work together, along with Kurama over here, to bring peace to your world. Our world. Together, partner," Naruto then raised his right arm and formed a fist, pointing at Didrag. Didrag chuckled deeply, before he too raised his scaly right hand and fist bump with Naruto. He then said, "Yes. Let us work together, partner. And you too, Kurama. I may not like this sharing and all that crap. But yes, let's work together," answered Kurama. "Good. I'd rather have you both as friends rather than bickering amongst yourselves," said Naruto, to which Hagoromo and Kurama looked at him with raised eyebrows. "What?" said Naruto. "Oh, nothing, oh, nothing." God could only chuckle at the scene in front of him before straightening himself and said, "Now that you three are all acquainted, Didrag, if you will." Didrag nodded before he was enveloped with crimson light, blinding Naruto, Kurama, and Hagoromo. After the light died down, Didrag has transformed into a red gauntlet, with 2 yellow horns at the top, and a green gem embedded at the back of the palm. God then picked up the gauntlet and gestured Naruto to put it on. Naruto walked up to God and picked up the red gauntlet before putting it on his right arm. "What now?" asked Naruto. "Now, I'll start binding Didrag into you, and transfer my knowledge of my world into you. This may hurt a little," said God, before he touched Gauntlet with his left hand, with his right hand touching Naruto's chest. He then started to chant something that he couldn't understand, and before he could blink, a golden magic circle appeared on where they stood. After 10 minutes of golden light shows and one hell of a headache, the ritual was done. "Any more knowledge transfer you two will do to me," said Naruto sarcastically, while rubbing his head with his hand. "That would be all, Naruto. I think you're all set and ready to go," said Hagoromo. "What about Kurama? Is he not going to be sealed in me?" asked our blonde hero. "Oh, he is already sealed in you. I just let him out for a bit via summon," answered Hagoromo. "Oh, okay," said Naruto, before Kurama nodded at him and he disappeared in a cloud of smoke, returning to his seal. "I'm all set, Hagoromo Gigi, God." God and Hagoromo nodded at him before Hagoromo used one his Rinne Sharingan techniques to open a portal. "By the way, you can turn on or off your eyes just like the Sharingan. You just have to cut the chakra flow to your eyes," said Hagoromo. "And train with Didrag when you get there. When you're at it, put up a barrier so that you won't draw any attention to you," said God. "I will. Thank you, Hagoromo Gigi, God. Till we meet again," said Naruto, before he walked up to the portal and entered inside. Leaving God and Hagoromo to themselves. Both were silent, before God said, "Do you think he could do it?" Without looking at God, he answered with a smile, "Believe me, my good friend. He will deliver. He isn't called the #1 unpredictable ninja for nothing." Naruto exited through the portal and was surprised to see the landscape was a bit barren for his taste. "And is it me or is the sky purple? Huh, weird. We're in the underworld, partner. That's why you're seeing purple sky," Didrag said. "Oh, okay then. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me." "Oh, and thanks for the info, Didrag," replied Naruto, while eyeing the surroundings for any signs of life. "Your world is a little bland, Didrag. Is it really this depressing?" asked Kurama to his co-tenant. "What? It is really depressing. It's not always this depressing. This was once a field filled to the brim with trees, flowers, and grass," answered Didrag. "Reminiscing the time when all was quiet. That is, before the damn war broke out." "What happened here?" asked Naruto, before kneeling to the ground to grasp a black-colored helmet. "War, partner. War. Devils tend to go all out on their magic when provoked," answered Didrag. Naruto sighs before he stood up and walked to the center of the field. Closing his eyes, he steadied his breath and relaxed his body to the point where he looks like he isn't breathing. "What is he doing?" asked Didrag to Kurama. "You'll see," and in 3, 2, 1, and just like that, Didrag felt a foreign power covered Naruto like a blanket. Untamed and pure energy, covering him up from head to toe before it entered his body. "What's this? I've never felt this kind of power before. This, my new scaly friend. is what we call senjutsu. Naruto is currently gathering natural energy to himself. You continue to impress me, Naruto Uzumaki. Truly, you are worthy of being my partner, thought Didrake before Naruto slowly exhaled and let out the natural energy he absorbed back into the world. He then suddenly spoke and still has his eyes closed. The natural energy around here is tainted. So much hate, anger, every negative emotion, no wonder nothing's growing here anymore, Naruto said before he opened his eyes. His Rinne Sharingan glowing with power. He then made a hand seal, tiger and then snake. Before he said the words that Didrake will forever remember. Mokuten Haijutsu, Jukai Koden. And the unthinkable happened. Trees, giant, green, trees sprouted up from the ground. From the very epicenter of it all, the trees sprouted as far as the eye could see. Growing at a rate that Didrake couldn't hope to see in his life. Such control of nature, said Didrake in awe. The only one who could make this remotely possible is God himself. It's just a technique of mine, Didrake. Well, it's my reincarnation's technique, actually. But you get the idea, Naruto said while admiring his work. Damn, Naruto. You don't hold back. Having almost infinite supply of chakra has its perks, Kurama, Naruto said before inhaling the fresh air that the trees were letting out. Didrake could only stare at the newly grown forest before he called for his partner's attention. Partner, I think it's time for you to train your body and practice your techniques. Plus, I'll be teaching you on how to properly wield me as your sacred gear. Naruto nodded his head before he answered, You're right, Didrake. It's time to train. He then positioned his hands, making a horse seal before saying, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. In a cloud of white smoke, out came 1,000 clones of the blonde sage. Didrake could only drop his jaw on the proverbial ground before saying, Why you can make solid C copies of yourself. Yeah, chakra, remember, answered Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders. He then positioned his hands into a snake seal before saying, Fuinjutsu, Rikurishan no Shoheki. Naruto then placed both of his hands on the ground before an arena-sized barrier materialized around them. He then looked at his clones and said, Alright. Listen up. I want you all to divide yourselves into 5 groups consisting of 200 clones in a group. Group 1 is tasked to train in all the techniques of each element. Group 2 will focus on the Mangekyo Sharingan's ocular techniques. Group 3 on the other hand, will train on using the Rinnegan's ocular techniques. And when I say all of them, I mean, all of them. Group 4 would be practicing Fuinjutsu. And lastly, Group 5. You will be coming with me. I'll need a good old-fashioned sparring while I use the boosted gear. All of you can go all out. The barrier I put up would cover our chakra signatures so no one could sense us. The landscape will grow back when we're done. Now go. Do your thing. Roger that, boss, replied all the clones to the original. And with that, the group of clones scattered and all hell broke loose. Naruto and the group of clones that are tasked as his sparring partners was moving onto the center of the barrier to train with Didrake's power. While walking, they could hear explosions explode in the distance, feel the ground shake where they walk, hear the cries of jutsus that are being thrown, and ethereal avatars that towers in the distance. Arriving at the center of the forest, Naruto then scattered his clones and let them know to get ready for the spar. He then sat on the ground before he asked Didrake, saying, Didrake. How do we do this? Right. Just feel the gauntlet on your right hand and say, Dragon Booster, answered Didrake. Okay then. Shouldn't be that hard. Naruto then took a deep breath before feeling the boosted gear's power on his right hand. Locking on to the power, he then said, Dragon Booster. Bright crimson light emanated from his right hand before the boosted gear manifested on his right hand up to his forearm. Opening and closing his fist, Naruto couldn't help but marvel at the boosted gear's design. It actually looks pretty good, Didrake. So, what does it does? Asked Naruto to his new partner. The boosted gear doubles your power, Naruto. Hence, from its namesake, boosted gear. Try it yourself. Just say, boost, and you'll feel the difference. Shrugging his shoulders, Naruto took a deep breath before saying, boost. The green gem on the boosted gear lit up and announced the word, boost. Before Naruto felt his power doubled right then and there. Son of a bitch, it did work. How many times I can boost my own power? Asked Naruto. Depends on how your body can take it. Boost will only work up until you reach your physical limit, answered Didrake. Ho, what if I say it in succession? Will it work? I think not. You have a 10-second interval before you can call upon another boost power up. Come on, Didrake. Don't be a party pooper. Let me try, answered Naruto before he said in succession, boost. 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 To Didrake and Naruto's surprise, the boosted gear answered, boost, 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 boost. Holy shit, it did work, said Didrake in disbelief. Meh. So, how can I release this? Oh, just concentrate on the collected boost and let it all out. Okay then. Naruto extended his right hand forward before concentrating on the collected boost on the gauntlet. He then saw the gem lit up and the gauntlet said, explosion. Power. 5x of his power were boosted. He felt alive. Damn. With this boosted gear, Naruto would be unstoppable, thought Kurama, while watching everything from Naruto's perspective. Alright, this should be enough, said Naruto before looking at his clones before gesturing them to come at him. Not far from the newly grown forest, a beautiful woman was running from her pursuers. She has long silver hair, beautiful silver eyes, and a body that would make any woman go crazy with jealousy. I got to make it to Searzex and the anti-Satan faction. They were right all along. We're doomed if we allow them to continue on their reign of tyranny. Muttered the Silverette before she dogged a magic attack that came from one of her pursuers. Where are you going, you traitorous bitch? Resistance is futile. Either way, you're good as dead, like the anti-Satan trashes. Said one of the pursuing devil before firing another magic spell at the running traitor. The woman dodged again before firing her own magic spell. She shot an ice spike at the closest devil that immediately found its mark, right directly at the devil's heart, killing one of the pursuer. You goddamn traitor. I don't care if Lord Risebum Lucifer wants you alive and unspoiled, Graphia Lucifuge. But we will have fun with you before we turn you in. We'll be sure you'll be screaming our name after we're done with you, said the devil with venom and untamed lust within his eyes when he said her name. Graphia narrowed her eyes before she was suddenly blocked by a barrier made by the devils who were pursuing her. She gritted her teeth when she saw that they began to surround her on all sides, making her chances of escape from slim to none. Now, Graphia, what say we start our little session? Hehehehe, said the devil with a laughter of perversion. Graphia could only steel her resolve before readying herself for the fight of her life. I'd rather die before you break me, asshole. And with that, the battle of Graphia's life started. She could only hope that someone would save her from a fate worse than death. While this was going, Naruto was busy fighting all his clones using the boosted gear. He was about to end one of his clones when he suddenly froze in mid-punch. The clones stopped also to eye their creator if he's okay. Boss, what's the matter? Asked one of the clones. I felt a surge of power. It's coming from the eastern end of the forest, answered the real Naruto while looking at the direction of the power surge. Do you want us to investigate the power surge, boss? No, it's fine. I'll do it myself. One of you should dispel so that the others know what's going on, said Naruto before running at the direction of the power surge. The clones nodded at the original before one of them suddenly spoke. You all heard the boss, one of us dispel while the others continue on what the hell we're doing. Free for all everyone? Asked one of the clones. Ho, I'm game. Come on, let's get this party started. Banzai. Graphia was tired, exhausted even. She was littered with cuts and bruises, and her magic reserves is nearly depleted. The area was littered with ice and the broken and dead bodies of the loyalist devil that are dead set of having their way with her before they returned her to the four Satans. So, Graphia, Are you done yet? I admit, I'm impressed that you managed to cut our numbers in half. But, I doubt you could still continue doing it while you're in your state, said the lead devil with a smirk. Graphia could only gritted her teeth once again. And for the first time in her devil existence, she was afraid. Afraid on what will they do her? Afraid that her life would be reduced to a broken woman in a cage, waiting for the next man to have his way with her, over and over and over again. She summoned the remaining magic powers she had, before two ice blades manifested on both of her hands. She assumed her battle stance and readied herself for the final clash for her freedom. She then launched herself at the closest enemy at breakneck speed before slashing the throat of the devil, dropping at the ground, dead. She then turned on her heels before slashing the eyes, then stabbing devil at heart, killing him. She brought up her hands in an X-like shape, blocking the sword swipe. She suddenly launched her leg backwards, kicking the assailant from behind before he could stab her. She then suddenly kneed the one in front her with such force on the stomach, that the devil let go of his weapon in favor of holding his stomach. Graphia then reversed her grip on one of ice blades she had before stabbing it on the back of the head of the devil. She was about to attack the next devil she see when she was suddenly blindsided by the lead devil. She was then ganged up by the loyalist devil, disarming her before she was held down by two devil soldiers. I told you, Graphia. Resisting us is futile. And now, for the price of your traitorous act. The lead devil then walked towards her slowly. Graphia could only shake in fear on what was going to happen to her. Every devil around her were eyeing her with lust. Like a piece of meat, ready to ravage by savage men. She could feel the lead devil touch her face, then slowly, brought his hands down to her, then to the zipper that was holding her bodysuit close. She then felt the zipper slowly go down from her neck to her. Her eyes started to water before she closed them, waiting for the inevitable to happen. She could only thought, please. Somebody. Anybody. Save me. Her prayers were answered. Oi, what are you all doing to this woman? Graphia slowly opened her eyes. She saw a tall man with a hooded cloak, standing in front of her, his back facing her. Who are you? Where did you come from? Said the lead devil in fear. I asked you a question, vermin. What are you going to do with this woman? Asked the man with such confidence and command. She couldn't help but stare at the back of the man with curiosity. Who is this man? Where did he came from? And why does she sense a dragon within him? That's none of your business. Who are you anyway? He was cut off in mid-sentence when he saw the man suddenly kneeled in front of Graphia and asked, Are you okay, ma'am? Did they do this to you? Graphia stared at the man in front of her. She could only see his cerulean blue eyes and blonde-colored bangs framing his face, under that hood cloak. She could only nod, not finding the strength to answer him directly due to exhaustion. The blonde-headed man nodded at her before he added, I understand. Wait here for a while, okay miss. I'll deal with the pest first before I can take you away, alright? Graphia nodded once again before the blonde suddenly raised his hand and put it on her shoulder, giving it squeeze. Graphia felt her heart warmed a bit at the gesture, but she didn't give a thought about it. The man then stood up and turned on his heels to face the lead devil, face to face. Alright, it's either we're doing this the easy way or the hard way. Easy way, you won't feel a thing when I end your lives here and now. While the hard way, I'll make sure to make your final minutes of your lives as painful as possible, said the cloak-hooded man. The devils blinked simultaneously before they laughed at the cloak-hooded man in front of them, before the hooded man spoke again, You have some guts, butting in on our business, asshole. I don't know if you could count, but we outnumber you 20-1. You won't stand a chance against us. The man was silent for a moment, before he raised his right hand forward and muttered the words the last thing the devils in front of him would hear. Shinra Tensei. And just like that, the lead devil, plus 5 or 6 of his friends were suddenly launched outwards with such force that the bodies were so disfigured that they couldn't be identified when they landed. The remaining devils could only gape at the sheer power of the cloak-hooded man possessed. No one remotely should have that kind of power. Graphia, on the other hand, was staring at the back of the blonde man with wide eyes and in surprise. Where did this man came from? Why didn't she know, or better yet, all of the bee-devil kind know of him? Surely, someone this powerful attracted the attention of the four Lucifers. But this was the first time she ever saw him and his power. The cloak-hooded man then turned to the remaining devils present before he said, "Burn to ashes." Amaterasu. And just like the first one, after he said the last words, the remaining devils suddenly caught on what seems to be black-colored flames. Flames that cannot be extinguished, no matter what you do to put it out. The remaining devils could only scream in agony, while rolling on the ground in hopes of extinguishing the fire. But, to their shock and horror, not that you could see it, the flames could only keep burning until nothing was left. Gradia didn't know what to say anymore. She didn't even know if she should thank the newcomer or be afraid of him. Thankfully, he was anything but a cruel and evil man. "Sorry you had to see that. I just don't like men ganging up on women. Especially if the woman is as beautiful as you." The blonde paused for a moment before waving his hands frantically, saying, "I didn't mean to say something like that. I mean, you are beautiful. I mean ag. Never mind." Graphia could only stare at him again with a faint blush, before chuckling at his antics. After a while, she regains again her composure before she said, "It's all right. Thank you for the compliment though." The blonde man could only rub the back of his head sheepishly while laughing awkwardly, before offering a hand to help her up. She accepted the helping hand before she stood up and looked at the tall blonde man. She could only guess that he was standing at least an impressive height of 6 foot flat. She was knocked out of her musings when the blonde man said, "My name's Naruto, Naruto Uzumaki." "What's your name?" Graphia stared at his eyes before she answered, "My name is Graphia Lucifuge." "It's nice to meet you." Naruto smiled at her, even though she couldn't see it, before he said, "It's nice to meet you as well, Graphia." Graphia nodded at him, before Naruto added, "Come on, my camp is not far from here. Follow me." He then turned to his heels and walked a few steps before looking back at her. "So, are you coming or what?" Graphia once again, for the nth time, stared at her savior. Is it really a good idea to come with this man? Come to think of it, now that she's basically free of her pursuers, there's nothing stopping her in going to the anti-Satan faction. But, here, her blonde savior was offering her a place to stay. And for once, she couldn't help but follow him. She didn't know, in the near-distant future, that the blonde-haired man she has the opportunity to meet was the one who would change their life forever. Trees, grass, leaves, flowers. This is what Graphia was seeing, and she was baffled by it. "Why?" you asked. Well, there wasn't a forest back then since the last time she checked. This was supposed to be a barren wasteland. It was devoid of any greenery since the Great War. How the hell did this forest? She was cut off of her musings when, if you're asking yourself on how come there's a forest here. "Well, I'm the reason for it," said her blonde savior. Oh, right, her savior, the mysterious blonde hooded man. She couldn't help but be cautious around him. Sure, he saved her from a fate worse than death. But, does his intention really pure? Does her savior really come for her help? For all she knows, he may be just like the ones who pursued her. She couldn't help but shiver at the thought. She was so deep in her musings that she didn't notice that they arrive at what seems to be a clearing of some sorts. She was then motioned to sit at one of the logs that were placed near a tent. Nodding at the gesture, she sat on one of the logs before a blanket was placed around her shoulder to cover her up from the growing cold air that was brushing at her being. "Thank you," muttered Graphia like a whisper. But, her savior heard it, clear as day. Smiling under his hood, her savior then said, "You know, Graphia, you have a beautiful name." She couldn't help but smile a little at the compliment. Pure honesty laced in his voice. Looking up, She saw his face was still covered by his hood. She was consumed by her curiosity of her hooded savior, so she asked the question that was plaguing her mind, Naruto, was it? Can I see your face? Smiling at that, Naruto brought his hands up to his hood before he slowly pulled it back to reveal his face. He then offered a hand to her, to which she accepted before he took the hand and placed a kiss on her knuckles, and smiled, yes, it's Naruto. Graphia still stunned at what she was seeing, despite the kiss he placed on her knuckles. He was by far the most handsome man she has ever seen. Maybe can make Sears's Grimoire a run for his money on the looks department. With the spiky, sun-kissed, blonde hair, chiseled face, cerulean blue eyes that can get you lost when gazed upon. Not to mention the 3 whiskers-like marks on each cheek that made him look like a fox. Wait, fox, yukai, he may be a yukai, judging from his whiskers-like marks. But he doesn't feel like a yukai. Naruto-san, may I ask, are you by chance a yukai? Asked Graphia carefully, still wary of the blonde-haired unknown in front of her. Naruto raised an eyebrow before he answered, yukai. What's a yukai? But, to answer your question, I'm a human. Graphia could only blink at his answer. Human. How could a human do such a feat? How could a human dispatch a squad of devils in a blink of an eye? How could a human be here at the underworld? And is that chakra? A human with chakra? Are you alright, Graphia-san? Asked Naruto, seeing that she was staring at him like he had grown a second head. Graphia blinked again before coughing at her hand to regain her stupor. Once done, she answered him, saying, I'm alright, Naruto-san. It's just that you're the first human to ever set foot in the underworld, plus, I can feel chakra flowing in you. Well, I'm not your normal kind of human. I'm a special case, answered Naruto with a smile before his face changed into a serious expression, asking, if I may ask, why were those devil pursuing you? Did you escape or something? Not noticing the subtle change of topic, Graphia could only shiver again at the thought of the event that happened earlier. Those eyes of her pursuers, she didn't want to be that helpless ever again. I was defecting. I found out what our leaders planned on doing with our race. They would sacrifice every devil, our every own life, just for the sake of continuing what our original leaders envisioned. I was a fool to follow them. Sears's was right, said Graphia, clinging on the blanket like a lifeline. Naruto gritted his teeth on what he heard. God was right, this world was really in need of saving. Despite being a devil, they believe in peace. Releasing a tired sigh, Naruto continued, question, who's Sears's? Graphia beamed at the name before she answered, Sears's Grimoire, heir to the Grimoire family. He's the leader of the anti-Satan faction, along with Seraphal Citra, Ajuka Astaroth, and Falbium Glacia Labilas. He believes that devils, angels, and fallen angels should coexist in order for us to have peace. If the war continues, he fears that we might as well go extinct. Naruto pondered on this new information. Anti-Satan faction. Sears's Grimoire. This he could work with. His original plan was simple, storm the fortress, kill the guards, then face the leaders. But with this, the devils will be in good hands. Did they know you would defect, Graphia? Asked Naruto. Graphia raised one of her eyebrows before she answered, no. But he has been recruiting me for some time now. Then you know where they are now? Asked again Naruto to the silverette. Shrugging her shoulders, she answered, yes. I know where they are. Naruto nodded his head before he said, okay then. Tomorrow I'll accompany you to wherever they are. After what happened earlier, I'm pretty sure that they are still searching for you. Plus, you're hurt and exhausted. You need to rest while I heal you. Graphia smiled a little before she nodded her head. Moving to seat next to her, Naruto proceeded to heal Graphia's wounds using the mystical palm technique. After some time, Naruto finished healing her cuts and bruises before saying, there, you're all patched up. He then motioned her at the tent and added, use my tent, rest for a while. Once your reserves are back, We'll leave for the anti-Satan faction. Nodding her head, she walked inside the tent, but before she entered the tent, thank you, Naruto, you didn't have to do this for me, muttered Graphia. Naruto looked at her for a second before he smiled. You're welcome, Graphia. It's the least I can do. Giving him her best and realest smile to her savior, Graphia retired for a while to rest. Seeing that she's finally resting, Naruto made some shadow clones to guard the perimeter before he leaned on one of the trees and closed his eyes to let sleep take him. Graphia awoke from one of her best sleeps she had ever had. She felt recharged, complete even. Then the memories kicked in from the events that happened before she slept. She looked around and found out that she's still in the tent. Looking at her clothes, she sighed in relief to see that nothing was amiss. Walking out of her tent, she saw Naruto was seating at the middle of the clearing, clearly meditating by the looks of it. Walking towards his savior, Graphia was about to greet him when she was startled by the sudden voice she heard coming from Naruto. Hello, Graphia. I take it that your sleep was good. Taking a deep breath to regain her composure, she answered, yes, Naruto-san. The sleep was good. Suddenly, she felt an overwhelming feeling of warmth wash over her. She looked at the source and found out that it was coming from Naruto, who apparently was exhaling his breath. Standing up from his seating position, Naruto then faced Graphia when suddenly she asked, what was that? Naruto rubbed the back of his sheepishly before he answered, sorry. I was meditating, and I subconsciously gathered natural energy around us. Had to release it. Graphia could only gape at what she heard. A human that can utilize senjutsu, who the hell was this person? Not only that he has chakra, he could even gather natural energy. Senjutsu, you can use senjutsu, muttered Graphia, still staring at him with her mouth still agape. You know senjutsu? Asked Naruto. Graphia could only nod her head at his question. Naruto could only chuckle nervously. Okay. I think I broke her. Uhu, you did. Both of you, shut up. Graphia regained her composure before she asked, who are you really, Naruto-san? Smiling at her, he gestured her to follow him before he answered, I'll explain in due time, Graphia. Right now, let's head for the anti-Satan faction base. Graphia narrowed her eyes at him before she answered, fine. You'll explain it to me when we get there. Yes, ma'am, Naruto said with a two-finger salute. To which Graphia smiled at his antics. Good. Now, would you follow me please? It's a long walk ahead, said Graphia before she walked past her savior. Naruto shook his head before he followed after her. In a room where only a single source of light was the only thing that was illuminating the room for the occupants, 4 individuals were having an emergency meeting. And by the looks of it, it wasn't good. The first person was handsome man with a shoulder-length crimson-red hair, and blue-green eyes, with an appearance of man in his early 20s. His name was Circex Grimori, son of Zeodicus Grimori and Benelena Grimori, and heir to the Grimori family. Next is a beautiful woman in her late teens with black hair, tied into twin tails and purple eyes. Her name is Seraphal Citri, heir to the Citri clan. Next is a bewitchingly beautiful and attractive young man appearing in his early 20s, with light blue eyes, and green slicked back hair. His name is Ajuka Astaroth, heir of the Astaroth family. And last, but not the least, we have a tall man whose head is completely bald, has gray eyes, and appears to be in his early 20s. His name is Falbium Glaciolabilis, heir to the Glaciolabilis family. Not only these 4 are the strongest among anti-Satan faction, they are also the 4 leaders of the anti-Satan faction, with Circex being the strongest among them all. What are we going to do now, Circex? Our line of defense is broken, our fortress is being sieged, and it's only a matter of time before they breach the main gate, explained Ajuka to Circex. I know, Ajuka, I know. We were caught off guard by their attack last night and it left our forces in ruin, answered Circex with a sigh. To top it all off, we are outnumbered by a large margin. We can't face an army of 20,000 loyalists with our army of 5,000. It's suicide, said Falbium while leaning at one of the walls in the room. Did we call any reinforcements? Asked Serafal while biting her thumbnail. Yes, we did, but they are days away from here. They won't make it in time, answered Ajuka. Then we need to hold our defense. We need to give everything we have, for us to survive this, said Sirzex. Then let's do it. Reinforce the walls and the main gate. We, at any circumstances, don't let the enemy breach that gate. If it comes to that, then we need to fight our way out to escape, said Ajuka while eyeing their fortress map for any weakness in their defense. All right, now we. Serafal was cut off in mid-sentence when one of their subordinates suddenly entered the room frantically, saying, "The gate has been breached. The loyalist has entered the courtyard." Shit. Son of a bitch. Damn it, said the three men, while Serafal narrowed her eyes. Sirzex then suddenly barked his order, saying, "All right. Calm down. Gather every able body and meet us in the courtyard. Have the civilians use the escape tunnels, while we fight our way out of here. That'll serve as a distraction for the civilians to escape." Sir. Yes, sir. It will be done, said the soldier before he turned on his heels and ran to fulfill his lord's order. Sirzex looked amongst his friends before gained a serious expression. Whatever happens, stick together. We'll survive this, Sirzex said. The three friends nodded at Sirzex before the latter walked out of the room, followed by his three friends into battle. They could only hope for a miracle to happen. Naruto and Grafia walked for some time in the early hours in the morning until it was noon, stopping only when they needed to rest for a bit or take a water break. While they were at it, Naruto explained to her where he came from and why was he here while they were traveling. Naruto first started his tale at the Fourth Great Shinobi World War up to the sealing of the Jubi into himself, resulting in his untimely death. But instead of passing on to the afterlife, his soul was pulled by his ancestor, Hagoromo Otsutsuki. His ancestor then explained to him that he already fulfilled his prophecy in his old dimension, and now, there is a world in need of him. After some time, he agreed to his ancestor, and proceeded to make a new body for him, passed everything he knows to him as a gift, before transporting him here in the underworld. To his ire, she called bullshit on that, to which it earned a twitching eyebrow from Naruto. Can you blame her? For all she knows, it could be bullshit. Let me get this straight. You're a revived hero from your dimension that was entrusted a mission from your ancestor to go here and save it? Asked Grafia, while still leading her blonde savior to the anti-Satan faction. Yup, said Naruto, popping the P at the end. And not only that, your remade body is much more durable and stronger, plus your ancestor bestowed upon you every jutsu he knows on each of the 5 elements in your dimension, including mastery on very affinity. Uhua. Sounds about right, answered Naruto with a shrug of his shoulders. Plus, you have the eyes of the primordial god that grants you the visual prowess of 2 of the 3 great dojutsu in your dimension. Actually, make it 3. Just found out earlier that I can also use my eyes like the Byakugan, answered Naruto. Grafia stopped walking before looking back to look at Naruto, saying, Byakugan. Naruto stopped also before answering, like I said, it's one of the 3 great dojutsus in my dimension. Byakugan are all saying white eye gives the user an almost 360 degrees diameter field of vision, with one blind spot at the back of the neck. The Byakugan also allows the user to extend his or her one's range of vision and see through solid objects. Grafia suddenly stopped on her tracks before looking back to gaze upon him. You do know that you are overwhelmingly powerful, Naruto-san. Yes, I know, answered Naruto simply with a shrug of his shoulders. Well, it's a good thing that you grow up to be the man you are right now, said Grafia with a smile. Why is that? Asked Naruto, genuinely curious on her answer. Because with great power, comes with great responsibility. And as far as I can tell, you embodied the word, responsible, answered Grafia with a smile. Thank you, Gray, Naruto suddenly stopped in mid-sentence and gained a serious look on his face when he felt an enormous amount of magic emanating from their destination. Grafia noticed his sudden behavior change and asked, "What is it, Naruto-san?" But the blonde didn't answer her. Unknown to her, he was having a conversation with his two tenants inside of him. "Kit, are you feeling that?" asked Kurama. "Yes, Kurama. It feels like." Naruto trailed off before his new partner added. "Magic. Massive amounts of magic are being released. Not only that, but it's the power of destruction. The same power of destruction that one Sears's Grimoire wields," said D-Drake. Raising an eyebrow internally, he asked, "And how do you know he's the one releasing it?" "I should know because I once fought him. He, alongside his devil kind, fallen angels, and with God and his angels, interrupted my battle with Albion, the vanishing dragon, my rival. In our anger for being interrupted, we attacked the three factions, resulting in our deaths and being turned into sacred gears by God." D-Drake answered. Naruto gained a deadpanned expression before saying, "You do know that you basically signed your own death warrants when you attacked them, right? Plus, if I recall correctly from the knowledge that God gave me, you both were so engrossed in your fight that you both failed to notice that you two were causing collateral damage." D-Drake could only chuckle sheepishly before answering, "Oh, alright." Naruto shook his head internally before asking, "Grafia, are you well rested yet?" His gaze still fixed ahead of them when suddenly, veins popped out from the side of his head, particularly, from the side of his eyes, signifying his usage of his Byakugan. "I am, Naruto-san. Is something wrong? You suddenly stopped in mid-sentence a while ago," asked again Grafia. "I'm afraid, there is." Focusing on extending his field of vision, he finally saw what was happening with the anti-Satan faction. "I think the anti-Satan faction is under attack. And judging from what I'm seeing right now, it's not going well for them," answered Naruto with narrowed eyes. Grafia widened her eyes. "Then let's get going then. We must help them," shouted Grafia with determined eyes. "I'm way ahead of you, Grafia. Let's go," answered Naruto before he sprinted away with Grafia. The latter, hoping that it's not too late. Sears and his friends, along with their army, was on their last legs. More than half of their forces were killed. But, they managed to bring their enemies' numbers to a surprising half of their original number of loyalist forces. Sears, along with Ajuka, fought to the last man in the courtyard. While Serafal and Falbium were protecting the entrance to the escape tunnels. The said tunnels were now sealed so that the civilians weren't followed. Serafal and Falbium rendezvoused with Sears and Ajuka after they sealed the tunnels off. Sears, "The tunnels are sealed and secured. We're the only ones left," shouted Serafal through the raging battle, while using her ice powers to impale any poor bastard who come across her. "Good. We push on through the front gate. Make our retreat now. Stay close to me," shouted back Sears before charging his power of destruction to full power before releasing it in front of him, rendering any poor soul that came into contact with it into dust. "There. Follow me," ordered Sears before he and his friends, along with the remaining forces they have, ran using the path Sears made for them. Using her powers, Serafal used her ice-based magic to act as a wall to block out any loyalist forces to cut them off of their escape. With Ajuka, he used his immense demonic power to render any enemy devil that came across him into minced meat, with Falbium doing the same. But not before breaking his enemy's bones into powder before destroying them completely using his powers. They were about to escape the one-sided battle when suddenly, their escape path was blocked by a legion of loyalist devils. They then were encircled by the remaining loyalist forces to render them trapped by their enemies. "Shit. We're trapped. What do we do?" shouted Serafal, while using her powers overtime to help defend their comrades from overwhelming odds. "We have no choice. Fight till the last man. If we're going to die, then let me tell you three that it's been an honor fighting alongside my friends," shouted back Sears before unleashing his powers to its fullest and releasing it onto their enemies. Ajuka could only smile before he too charged his immense demonic power before forming it into his hands and engaging into a full-on close-quarter combat. Obliterating any body part it came into contact with. Falbium smirked before he then charged at the enemy with calculating movements, demolishing any opposition in his way. Seraphal could only smile at her friends before using her powers into its fullest potential. Concentrating on her powers, she conjured a dragon that's made of ice before willing it to attack the opposing devils. The battle went on, and the anti-Satan faction was finally gaining ground, reducing their enemies' number more and more. But, like our dear friend, Murphy said, anything that can go wrong, will go wrong. Sirzex, look out, shouted Ajuka to his best friend. Sirzex was too late when he was suddenly blindsided by an enemy devil loyalist. Tumbling on the ground, Sirzex managed to pry himself away from his attacker and was about to retaliate when an ice spike went through the would-be attacker's head. Sirzex, are you alright? Asked Seraphal before slamming her hand on the ground, conjuring up ice spikes that spread outward. Killing some loyalist devils that didn't have the time to dodge the attack. Sirzex nodded to Seraphal before he stood up from his crouching position. He winced at the sudden pain he felt before checking the side where his assailant managed to tackle him. He found a dagger, lodged in his side. Seraphal widened her eyes before Sirzex removed the lodged dagger, not before wincing again in pain in removing the said dagger. Son of a bitch. That hurt. Here, let me stop the bleeding, said Seraphal before using her ice magic to freeze the stab wound. Sirzex gritted his teeth in pain again. That really fucking hurt. Removing her hand from his wound, she nodded at her work before saying, there, all done. Thank you, Seraphal-chan, said Sirzex, before standing up. Albeit, slowly. His two other friends regrouped with them before Ajuka suddenly spoke, Sirzex. Are you alright? Sirzex looked at his best friend before answering, yes, I'm fine, Ajuka. What's the situation? Ajuka looked at him grimly before answering, to be honest. We're practically making our last stand. Sirzex could only stare at him for a minute before shifting his gaze around them. He saw the loyalist devils were closing in around their position and judging from the number of magic circles that were conjured up and pointed right at them, their time is almost up. Closing his eyes, and releasing a tired sigh, he said, all right then. If we're going down, we're taking a lot of them with us. Ajuka, Seraphal, and Falbium could only nod at him before they formed a circle, and all of them were back to back from each other. Each one of them charged up their demonic powers and was about to release it to attack the loyalist devils when suddenly ice spikes sprouted around them, impaling many loyalist devils from the sudden surprise attack. Seraphal-chan. Did you do that? Asked Sirzex. No, it wasn't me, answered Seraphal, still baffled by the sudden ice attack. Then who was it? Asked Falbium before they heard a womanly voice spoke from above them. Sirzex-sama, Seraphal-sama, Ajuka-sama, and Falbium-sama. Are you all alright? Asked the unknown woman. Graphia-chan, said Sirzex, recognizing the newcomer. To which the other three recognized as well, not that I'm not glad that you're here and all. But, why you're here? Did Rizvam send you? Asked Sirzex. Dropping down from above them, she landed in front of Sirzex before answering, no, Sirzex-sama. I left the house of Lucifer after finding out on my own the truth and outcome of this war. Sirzex smiled at her before saying, I'm happy that you are finally with us, Graphia-chan. Graphia smiled a little at him before he added, but, I'm afraid that we still have loyalist scum to deal with. Graphia's smile turned to a full-blown smirk, to which Sirzex, Seraphal, Ajuka, and Falbium noticed, before she spoke, do not worry. I'm not the only one who came. Seraphal raised one of her eyebrows before she said, then where is your calm? She was cut off in mid-sentence when she saw one the loyalist devils got close and was about to stab Graphia from behind. Look out! Shouted Seraphal. Time seemed to slow down for the four friends. They were all certain that the silver-haired woman was going to die, if they didn't stop the loyalist attacker. To their surprise, the Silverette still has her smirk plastered on her face, despite the incoming attack on her person. Sears X was about to attack the loyalist who was about to stab Graphia when suddenly Sears X, Serafal, Ajuka, and Falbium widened their eyes when a cloaked figure suddenly appeared in front of the would-be attacker and grabbed the attacker's hand in a vice-like grip. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The cloaked figure then proceeded to crush the offender's hand, making the loyalist drop his knife. He then let go of the crushed hand before using his other hand to bury it to the devil's stomach. If you look closely, you could see the hand threatening to emerge from the other side of the devil's back. He removed his buried hand before grabbing the back of the devil's head and slamming it on the ground, burying the head, along with half of the devil's body with such force that the ground that the head was slammed into broke apart, forming wide cracks all around from the epicenter and forming one big dust cloud. All in all of this was done in mere seconds, earning him wide eyes and jaw drops from the 4 leaders of the anti-Satan faction, and also with Graphia. Removing his now bloodied hand from the literally man-made crater, the cloaked figure asked, "Are you all right, Graphia?" While eyeing the surrounding enemies one by one. Glancing at her savior, she answered, "I'm all right, Naruto-san." She looked at the 3 of the 4 leaders of the anti-Satan faction, before her eyes locked onto Sears X. Specifically, the wound that was frozen on his side. Though one of the leaders of the anti-Satan faction is wounded, added Graphia. The 4 future Maos of the underworld raised their eyebrows. Who is this Naruto? What house is he from? Is he even friendly? Is he really here to help them? Why can't they read his power, or even his demonic energy? Many questions were popping out of their heads, especially Ajuka. But for Sears X, the only question that's circling in his head is, why is he with Graphia? The cloaked figure nodded his head before he parted his cloak to unsheath what seems to be a chikudo from his back and holding it in a reverse grip. Assuming his stance, he spoke, "Understood. Get them out of here, along with the rest of the rebels, Graphia. I'll hold them off while you all escape." He was about to spring into action when one of the leaders suddenly shouted, "Are you insane? There's still thousands of them here. How in 7 hells are you going to accomplish that?" Naruto glanced at the one who spoke, and he found out that the one who spoke was a beautiful woman, easily on par on the looks department against Graphia. Instead of the cloaked stranger answering, it was the Silverette who answered for him. "Do not worry, Serafal-sama." She glanced again at her savior, smiling a bit, she added, not noticing the narrowed eyes of Sears X when she smiled a bit, "He is well capable of." Naruto nodded at Graphia before he shifted his gaze back to the loyalist devils. "Kurama, we're up. D-Drag, you'll sit this one out. Don't want them to find out about you being my sacred gear yet." D-Drag nodded, "I understand, partner. You still haven't finished training also, using the boosted gear." Before Kurama answered, "Are we going to use our new form?" "Yup. This would be a perfect opportunity to try out our new cloak, Kurama," said Naruto while grinning. Kurama also grinned before answering, "Well then, let's do this, Naruto." Naruto internally nodded to his new partner before closing his eyes. Feeling his chakra in sync with Kurama, Naruto started gathering nature energy around him. Sears X, Serafal, Ajuka, Falbium, and even Graphia, once again widened her eyes at the feeling they are experiencing, as well as what they are seeing as well. As for the fighting around them, they too stopped what they were doing, in favor of looking at the cloaked figure and the power he was releasing in the air. Naruto gained a dark crimson aura that buckled the ground where he stood. The aura then formed what seems to be 10 tails of a fox, swaying back and forth lazily. Removing his hood with one hand, everyone saw that his hair has same color just like his aura and was standing end to end. The hair also looks to be like it has a mind of its own, dancing like the fire from a bonfire in a camp. His facial features on the other hand, was different. In the eyes of Graphia that is. His whisker-like marks looks to be more defined than ever. His canines sharpened and elongated enough that it poked out from his mouth. When he opened his eyes changed from cerulean blue to crimson red, while his pupils were changed into slits. It can't be. This feeling, senjutsu, that's senjutsu, but how? Said Ajuka, still not believing what he's seeing, let alone sensing the power of the unknown person was releasing in front of them. Senjutsu. But I thought senjutsu could only be used by yukais. And by the looks of him, he is no yukai. Shouted Seraphal. Well, he can use it. Said Falbium. He too was gaping like a fish. Sirzex could only gape as well, and couldn't help but wonder, who the hell is this guy? Looking over his shoulders, he looked at the 4 leaders before it, Graphia, nodding at her, being the silent signal that she should get them out of there. Graphia understood what her savior wanted her to do before she nodded back him. Returning his gaze at his opponents, Naruto bent his knees forward, before he suddenly disappeared from his position with the air where he stood imploded and the ground, disintegrated. In a straight line, Naruto moved past them at lightning speed before the bodies he went through suddenly collapsed to the ground, dead. With their heads severed from their shoulders. Standing up from his crouched position, Naruto disregarded the 5 devils, who were about to use him as a human pincushion, much to the glee of the would-be attackers. To their surprise, their weapons phased through their opponent, and out of the 5 devils, 3 lived, while the other 2 died from each other's sword strike. Naruto inwardly smirked before looking at the remaining 3 out of 5 devils who attacked him. Now I know why Obito loved using this ability. Before backhanding his first target, sending the poor devil through their own ranks with a shattered jaw, with the head looking backward. Disappearing from their view, Naruto reappeared behind the 2 devils before grabbing both of their heads and used the human path ability to yank the soul out of the 2 devils from their body, storing them within the King of Hell and effectively killing them. Using again his intangibility technique, Naruto phased through some enemy magic attacks before disappearing from where he stood and reappearing on his next target. Caught off guard of the sudden appearance of the one-man army killer, Naruto bisected the surprised devil diagonally before dodging left from an enemy magic attack. Bending his knees, Naruto launched himself again at the loyalist devils. Bisecting, disabling, or the occasional maiming of said devils. While this was going, the 4 soon-to-be Maos could only watch with their mouths still hung ajar. Such power, said Sirzex, while looking at the Karna. No, a massacre of one man was doing to an army of supposed trained devil soldiers. I know why you mean, said Ajuka, while Seraphal and Falbium could only nod as their answer. The 4 soon-to-be Maos suddenly heard a cough from the side, making them look at the source, Sirzex-sama, Seraphal-sama, Ajuka-sama, and Falbium-sama. If you all would be so kind, let us be off. I have the utmost trust that Naruto-san can hold them off, while we escape. The 4 of them looked at one another before nodding at the same time. They gathered what remains of their forces at their location before issuing the order to retreat. Some were glad that they could finally escape while the others were reluctant to leave, knowing that they can win with the cloaked man's help. Graphia lead the group out of the fighting while using her powers to kill any loyalist devils that stands in their way of escape. Sirzex and Ajuka formed up on Graphia's side and started helping her with the job of clearing the way of enemies. While this was going, Seraphal and Falbium was ushering their comrades to follow Graphia, Sirzex, and Ajuka. Once all of their forces are following their friends in the maid, both Seraphal and Falbium followed after them. The loyalist devils spotted the retreating traitors and proceeded to try and cut them off from the leading group. Seraphal was caught off guard by a stray enemy spell that erected a stone wall in front of her, effectively isolating her from the group. Falbium, who was the closest to Seraphal, was about to assist her, was suddenly cut off as well by overwhelming odds. Seraphal saw this and cursed under her breath that she was cut off by any means of escape. Looking from side to side, she saw that she was outnumbered 100 to 1 and by the looks of her would-be attackers, she saw the lust-filled look on their eyes and was ready to overpower her in sheer numbers. She was about to attack them when suddenly, she saw that her would-be attackers' looks turned from lust into horror, and then she felt an overwhelming feeling of warmth and comfort behind her. Like she felt that nothing will happen to her at that moment. Looking over to her shoulder, she saw the towering form of the guy that was with Grafia, standing right behind her and glaring daggers at her would-be attackers. "Are you okay? Did they do anything to you?" asked the cloaked blonde man. Feeling nervous all of a sudden, Serafal answered, "Why yes, I'm fine." Glancing at her, he nodded before returning his gaze back at the enemy. "What's your name, miss?" Serafal looked at him again, but now with a smile, and answered, Serafal Citri." "And why you are?" Naruto walked past her while he answered, "Naruto Uzumaki. It's nice meeting you, Serafal. Now, I would love to get to know you and the others more, but you will have to excuse me. I have pests to deal with." And with that, all hell broke loose. Naruto charged in and proceeded to beat them all 6 ways to Sunday. To say Serafal was impressed was an understatement. She saw that Naruto not only did break their bones into tiny pieces, he made sure that they wouldn't use it the same way the said limb what it's supposed to do. Whenever a punch, a kick, a sort of swipe, or even a tackle, Naruto would counter and then proceed to disable them with extreme prejudice. One devil was unlucky enough to overextended his arm reach when he tried to stab Naruto, but Naruto capitalized on this and proceeded to disarm him, grabbed his wrist, extended his arm, and then uppercutted the extended arm at the elbow, dislocating the forearm from the elbow before hitting the shoulder with enough force that dislocated it as well, rendering the whole arm useless. That said devil was one of the lucky ones, mind you. The others, well, broken necks, shattered ribs, spine, and some, skulls. Courtesy of a senjutsu-powered punch that caved one of the devil's skull in. After a one-sided fight that lasted for about 3 minutes or so, Naruto proceeded to walk back to Serafal, who was gaping at the one-sided beatdown that Naruto gave to the loyalist devils. Naruto stood in front of Serafal before he said, "You should go now, Serafal. I've cleared the way for you." Serafal looked at Naruto, then at the wailing loyalist, then back at him, "All right." While Serafal hightailed out of there, Naruto looked back at the remaining loyalist force before positioning himself between the anti-Satan faction and the loyalist devils. Channeling his chakra to full power, buckling the ground from the sheer power he was releasing before muttering, "Senpo, Dodengoraku." With that, the space in front of Naruto suddenly formed a large fissure that expanded horizontally for miles on end, effectively cutting off the loyalist and the anti-Satan faction and making them retreat due to the power they felt on the attack. While this was going, Sirzex and the others was looking at him from the distance, and for the last time, they couldn't hold their jaws from dropping to the ground. Even Grafia was stunned by the sheer power that Naruto was showcasing. Such power. To think he is just a human, said Sirzex. Grafia-san, you really are lucky that he found you when you finally decided to defect to us, said Ajuka, still having trouble believing what he was seeing. That I am, Ajuka-sama. That I am, answered Grafia, while a minuscule smile slowly etched on her lips of the memory of Naruto saving her. Sirzex saw the smile and couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Did you see how he disposed of the loyalist who was about to attack Serafal? That feat alone is a major plus in my books, said Falbium, smiling at the lone human who stood at overwhelming odds like they don't even stand a chance against him. Also, for a human, he looks kinda handsome, said Serafal, looking also at her savior who is walking back at their direction with his chakra cloak deactivated. Hearing this, Grafia couldn't help but frown at Serafal's remarks against her blonde savior. Look, here he comes, said Ajuka, who proceeded to walk forward to meet their savior. Seeing this, Serafal, Sirzex, Falbium, and Grafia followed after Ajuka, who was now conversing with the blonde human. Walking up to them, Serafal couldn't help but mutter, "Did I say handsome? I meant drop-dead gorgeous. He's handsome than you, Sirzex Tan." The eyes of Sirzex and Grafia were twitching uncontrollably, but with different reasons. Oh, shut up Saratan, muttered Sirzex while Graphia glared at Serafal. Naruto and Ajuka shifted their eyes to the approaching group with latter saying, "Ah, good. Everyone's here. I would like you all to meet our newest ally for our cause." Sirzex and the others gave their undivided attention. Even though Serafal and Graphia already know his name, they nonetheless listened to his introduction. Naruto looked at the persons or devils in front of him, depending on who you are asking, and said, "Hello, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm the Nadaime Rakudo Sennin." "Hello, Naruto-san. I'm Falbium Asmodeus. It's nice to finally meet you," said Falbium with a smile. "Likewise, Falbium-san," answered Naruto also with a smile. "And I'm Sorich's Grimori," said Sirzex with a smile, while offering his hand to Naruto. Naruto accepted the handshake and shook his hand with a strong grip. "Hello, Sirzex-san." Releasing his grip to his hands, Naruto looked at Serafal with a nod, saying, "Serafal." "Naruto-san," answered Serafal with a sweet smile. Perhaps a little too sweet. Naruto then looked at Graphia with a smile and said, "Graphia." "Hello, Naruto-san," answered Graphia with a smile. To which Sirzex narrowed again his eyes. Why is it she keeps on smiling to him? Thought Sirzex. Naruto then looked at Ajuka and said, "I know you all have questions for me, and I will answer them truthfully with the best of my ability. But, we must find shelter. I'm guessing that the castle that the loyalist has laid siege isn't the only one you got, am I right?" "Correct, Naruto-san. That castle isn't the only one we have. If you would follow us, we'll lead you to our next hideout," answered Ajuka. "All right then, lead the way," said Naruto with a smile before looking at Graphia for a second, and then proceeded to follow Ajuka and the rest of their army. "Nadaime Rakudo Sennin, what the hell is that?" said Sirzex while following the blonde human and his friend. "Naruto-san will explain himself, Sirzex-sama, when we arrive at our destination," said Graphia in her neutral tone with her stoic face. "Uhu, right. You already know this, don't you, Graphia-chan?" asked Sirzex. "Yes, but not all of it. He promised to explain it in detail when he finally met all of you, Sirzex-sama," answered Graphia. "Okay, Graphia-chan," said Sirzex, before adding, "Do you trust him?" Graphia looked at Sirzex in the eye and said, "Yes, Sirzex-sama." Sirzex could only nod and walked fast to catch up with his friend. Seeing that they were alone now, Serafal then said, "Sue, how did he save you?" Graphia could only smile and said, "Like a knight in shining armor," before she walked up to Naruto and positioned herself beside him. Serafal could only pout at her before moving to the other side of Naruto in hopes of getting to know the blonde more than Graphia. Wrath of the Dragon Emperor, Part 1. 6 months. 6 months have passed since the day Naruto arrived at the world that God had sent him. 6 months have passed since Naruto and the Four Maos had met each other. And 6 months have passed since Naruto had saved them from a surprise attack from the loyalist devils. Since the months he has been here in this new world, Naruto has been training himself past his limits. With the help of his shadow clones, he has finally mastered his newfound strength and powers he got from Kurama, the new Jubi. Including his dojutsus and techniques in every element. He has also mastered his sacred gear, the boosted gear. With the help of D-Drag, Naruto can now access his balance breaker, the Welsh Dragon balance breaker, with no difficulties whatsoever. The only thing that he didn't try out for himself was his Juggernaut drive, since he has no intention as of now to announce to the whole underworld that he is the new wielder of the boosted gear. Now, we found our soon-to-be Maos bleeding, bruised, and exhausted from a one-sided beatdown from their taskmaster. And apparently, their taskmaster isn't done with them yet. God damn it, Ajuka. Any plans in taking him down? Said Sirzex before dodging a slab of rock and earth that nearly got him from his taskmaster. Yes. Dodge. Just fucking dodge. And hope that we can survive this. Answered Ajuka before ducking from a kick that went over his head, missing him by mere centimeters. This is getting ridiculous. It's been. Serafal didn't get to finish her sentence when a punch suddenly found her solar plexus before a kick landed on her face with enough force that her body was thrown towards her two friends that knocked them down on the ground. Serafal, are you alright? Shouted Falbium before he was blindsided by a lightning-powered lariat that sent him onto the ground before his attacker proceeded in kicking him at the side that sent him to his three friends that was slowly getting up from their one-sided beatings. Their taskmaster is none other than Naruto Uzumaki, who was grinning ear to ear while walking up to them slowly. Hey, Naruto. Come on, man, it's been 3 hours since we started our 4-on-1 spar. We're running on fumes here, said Searsex pleadingly while sweating furiously on what their taskmaster plans on doing to them. Naruto stopped walking. Raising an eyebrow, he answered the redhead, saying, your point being. With his answer, Ajuka, in a blink of an eye, stood up with a tick mark on his head before answering their blonde sensei, our point being, are you trying to get us killed? Searsex paled before muttering, oh shit. Realizing what he had done, Ajuka paled also before taking small steps back, muttering, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Naruto cracked his knuckles before saying, it's too late for that now, Ajuka. The blonde sensei then bent his knees before adding, now, come here. After an hour or so, 4 beaten bodies were found in the infirmary of the anti-Satan faction, with their taskmaster whistling a happy tune while walking away from the said infirmary, with both of his hands on the back of his head. If you're wondering why they were beaten half to death by their sensei. Well, it's because they asked the blonde shinobi to train them. They didn't know that the kind-hearted, blonde-haired boy, no, man, that he is one sadistic son of a beep. Ever since the day they saw Naruto fought off an army of evils, they asked him almost every day to train them. At first, he wasn't sure if they needed training. Knowing that they were the leaders of a faction that opposed the current rulers, he assumed that they were already powerful devils. Plus, the number of supporters they have, gave him more reason that they didn't need any more training. But Graphia told him that she was once in a battle when she saw the 4 Maos fought against Searsex and the others when she was still on the loyalist side. She recalled that, if it wasn't for Searsex using his power of destruction, they would have perished in battle. After hearing what Graphia had said, Naruto accepted their request but not before telling them that he would have them pass their limits and they wouldn't dare question his methods in reaching that goal. Unfortunately for them, they didn't know that Naruto was the meaning of the word, taskmaster. Speaking of Graphia, Naruto and Graphia's friendship has grown tremendously since the past 6 months. The both of them could be seen always talking to each other, sparring with one another, or in some cases, both were eating lunch or dinner together. Sometimes having breakfast together. Some would say they are already a couple. Some would say that they're just close friends. But one redhead and one raven-headed woman was having none of it. Though with different reasons. The redhead was jealous. Jealous that their blonde-haired sensei was so close with the silverette to the point that they seemed to be inseparable. With one looking for the other always when one is missing. He didn't hate his blonde-haired sensei, but he couldn't help but be jealous that when he finally found the woman that could make his heart skip a beat and possibly, his wife someday. The same woman who he felt at some point in this war, reciprocated what he was feeling for her, but had finally found what she was looking for. His sensei. He was happy for them both, mind you. Heck, he already considers his blonde-haired sensei one of his best friend, next to Ajuka. Still, the redhead still wishes that he was the one that the silverette wants. Oh, well, maybe she has a sister that he didn't know about. Maybe he should ask her sometimes about that. The ravenet, however, was feeling the opposite of the redhead. Well, maybe in some ways that is. Yes, she's also jealous. But not with the blonde, oh no. She's jealous with the silverette. She wishes she was the one that the blonde was paying attention to. She wishes that she was the one that he was having breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the blonde. That was the only thing she has in common with the redhead, was feeling towards the two. The rest, well, she was pitying the silverette. Why, you may ask? For starters, the blonde was also the meaning of the word, dense. She could see, clear as day, that the silverette has totally fallen for their blonde-haired sensei. She's practically hanging out with him every single day, and their blonde-haired sensei couldn't even take a hint. Sure, he always said that they were just friends hanging out. But, please, even a toddler could see that Grafia has totally been smitten by him, and yet the blonde sees it as a sign of close friendship between them. She can't blame Grafia though. Power attracts devils. The more you're powerful, the more attention you would garner from the devil populace. And she was one of that populaces. She can't give up now. Oh, no, if she must fight the silverette over their sensei, then bring it. Naruto was walking towards his room, still whistling a happy tune, when a familiar silver-headed woman suddenly walked beside him, hands in front of her, wearing a dark blue, skin-tight bodysuit that hugged her figure so well that every devil that laid their eyes upon her, followed her. Not even looking at his companion, Naruto asked with a smile, "Hey, Grafia. How was your mission?" Grafia moved a little bit closer to the blonde before answering, "Went well for the most part. We got caught by an ambush when we were pulling out." Stopping on their tracks, Naruto turned his body to the side to look at her from head to toe, before Naruto asked again, "Are you alright? Were you hurt?" Looking at his eyes, Grafia gave him a small smile before answering, "I'm fine, Naruto-san. Not a scratch on me." Naruto rolled his eyes before saying, "Come on, Grafia. What did I tell you about those honorifics? And besides, we're both alone here." Shaking her head, Grafia answered with a smile, "Fine, Naruto." There. Happy. Naruto smiled also before saying, "Yes. Very." They resumed their trek to Naruto's room before Naruto added, "Up until now, it still bothers me that you always keep that stoic face of yours when there are other people around." Looking at his peripheral vision, Naruto added again with a smile, "You should always smile, Grafia. It suits you perfectly." Grafia couldn't help but turn her head to the side to hide her growing blush at the blonde's remarks towards her. During the months they have spent together since his arrival on their world, Naruto has been steadily breaking her visage of her stoic personality. Never had a person or devil could break her ever-perfect stoic persona. It was practically shoved and embedded inside of her when she was young and training to be the maid of the Maos. And yet when Naruto arrived, her once impenetrable visage was taking damage every time she spent with the blonde. It was one of the reasons why she was so interested with him. The other reasons: he was very kind, sweet, and caring. Never did he turn down a devil who needs help. Especially when they occasionally came across homeless people who were affected by the civil war. He would go out of his way to help them in any means he could. He would use his powers to create housing for them, grow food for them. Heck, even the soldiers look up to him because of how he treats them. No soldier was left behind, even the dead. He would personally walk back to the battlefield to retrieve the fallen soldiers and walk back like nothing has happened. And when he returns, he would make it to a point that they were buried with honors. Now, she was seeing the blonde more than interest in her eyes. She was seeing the blonde more than she sees Searsex 6 months ago. The problem is, does the blonde feel the same way about her? Sure, he was worried always for her, care for her when she was with him. But he doesn't give any indication that he likes her also. Maybe he was shy, or afraid of what she would say to him when he finally tells her about his feelings. Possibly towards her. So many questions, and yet she was afraid also of what he would say to her. Afraid that he doesn't like her the way she likes him. Maybe after the war they could talk about this. And hope that the blonde likes her. Besides, she has a reputation to uphold. Only with Naruto that she will allow herself to be open. When they aren't alone, she's back to be her stoic maid personality. Back to their conversation, Grafia answered him, saying, "I have a reputation to uphold. Though thank you for the compliment. And you're the only one who's allowed to see me like this, muttering the last part to herself. Naruto shrugged his shoulders before answering, hey, just saying. After a few minutes of walking, the both of them arrived at the blonde's room, before the latter added, so, dinner later tonight. My treat for your mission's success. Graphia smiled brightly at him before answering, sure, Naruto. Same time. Naruto nodded his head before saying, yes, same time. The Silverette nodded her head before answering, okay. See you later, Naruto. Yeah, see you, said Naruto, before entering his room to take a bath and maybe, take a nap before their dinner. After waking up from his nap, Naruto met up with Graphia at exactly 7 p.m. at her room, with the both of them wearing their casual clothes. With Naruto, he was wearing an orange zip-up long sleeves, turtleneck shirt, with the zipper reaching up to his neckline, with black trimmings on the ends of the sleeves and shirt. Black pants that reached past his knee, that was paired with black sandals that reached up to his pants. With Graphia, she was wearing a white form-fitting V-neck shirt that left a sizable amount of cleavage for anyone, mostly for Naruto, to see, paired with a dark blue jacket. Black skin-tight pants that accented her hips and legs really, well. And white stilettos. Walking out of their base, Naruto led Graphia to one of their favorite restaurants in town. The two of them proceeded to order their chosen food after they were seated at their reserved table, courtesy of Naruto. The food, as always, was delicious. Paired with great company, good wine, and funny stories, safe to say, the pair's night was just only starting. Heard that you beat your students again to an inch of their life again, said Graphia after drinking her wine with a smile. Naruto chuckled before taking a sip from his wine as well before answering, I wouldn't say an inch of their life, seeing that she has one of her eyebrows raised. Naruto added, alright, fine. They were beaten to an inch of their life, but that was at the beginning. I swear. Graphia gave him a deadpan stare before answering, right. Just what I thought. And you healed them a while ago when you brought them to the infirmary, correct? Naruto slumped his shoulders, looking down before answering, yes, looking back up to her. He added, it still surprises me that you know what I did and what I will do. A faint blush formed on her cheeks, but she beat it back down before smiling at him and answered, I just know you that well, Naruto. Naruto chuckled before smiling at her and said, that you do. Then, a waiter came with desserts. Not just any desserts, but it was Graphia's favorite dessert, tiramisu. To which Graphia's eyes widened a bit before Naruto added with a heartwarming smile, and just like you, I just know you that well too, Graphia. Graphia's cheeks colored pink when she saw that smile of his. Rather than controlling the heat that was forming on her face, she let it form. She took a bite of her favorite dessert and couldn't help but sigh in contentment, savoring the flavor that was the food of the gods. To her at least. Naruto chuckled before taking a bite of his slice of tiramisu also. He was about to talk again to Graphia when two soldiers walked up to them and spoke. Naruto-sama, Graphia-sama. Sirzex-sama request your presences immediately. Naruto and Graphia nodded their heads before Naruto paid for their meal and followed the two soldiers back to their base. While on their way, Naruto asked the two soldiers, so, any of you know what's going on? The soldier on the left answered, I believe we have a new mission, Naruto-sama. Sirzex-sama is gathering the generals and leaders of their battalion. Naruto nodded before looking at Graphia, saying, it looks like we're mobilizing again. Maybe I should talk to Sirzex about not letting you come to this mission. You just came back from one. Graphia smiled at him, feeling a bit bold. Graphia grabbed right arm with the two of her hands, giving them a reassuring squeeze, before saying, I'm fine, Naruto. Honest. I have plenty of rest since I came back from my mission. Naruto sighed tiredly before answering, fine. Come on, let's get this over with. Graphia nodded, letting her hands linger on his arm a bit longer before letting go. After a few more minutes of walking, Naruto and Graphia arrived at the war room of their base. There, they find Sirzex already waiting for them, along with Serafal, Ajuka, and Falbium. The others were the generals of the army who are also waiting for them. Judging by the number of seats that are vacant, it seems that they were the final pair that they were waiting for. Sorry we're late everybody, announced Naruto, before taking his seat at the table, with Grafia sitting beside him on his right. It's okay, Naruto, and sorry for ruining your dinner with Grafia, said Sirzex, before looking at the people on the table before adding, now that we're all here, I would like everybody's attention please. Every head on the table looked at Sirzex before the latter explained, 2 hours ago, our spy from the Loyalist faction came back with an information that could win us the war. Gesturing at the map on the table, Sirzex pointed out, as you can see, one of these sectors houses the main supply lines depot of the Loyalist faction. A collective gasp was heard before murmurings started between themselves. Raising one hand to gain their attention again, Sirzex continued, the other, is the main base of operations of the Loyalist army. One general suddenly spoke, if the intel is correct, then like you said, Sirzex-sama, we could finally end this civil war once and for all. Sirzex nodded before gesturing for Ajuka to take the lead, you're right general. Now, we believe that the main base is located right here on this sector. Pointing at the one on the right of the two highlighted sectors. Since this is the main base of the Loyalist army, we expect heavy resistance from the army stationed there. Looking at Naruto, Ajuka added, as for who is leading the party that will attack this base, it will be you, Naruto. Naruto nodded his head in acknowledgement before Ajuka added, since you're the one leading, you get to choose how many men and women you need for this operation. Naruto once again nodded his head before Ajuka pointed on the left of the highlighted sector, since this is a sabotage mission. Looking at Grafia, Ajuka added, Grafia, you and your men will raid the supply depot, along with Sirzex and Falbium. Grafia nodded her head before Ajuka looked back to his audience, if we play this right, we can finally storm the Mao's palace and end this pointless war. Nodding to Sirzex, Ajuka took a step back to let Sirzex take his place. Before I end this meeting, any questions? One general raised his hand before Sirzex nodded to let him speak, if I may, Sirzex-sama. May I request to accompany Naruto-sama on his mission to take the Loyalists' main base? Sirzex smiled at the general before answering, if it's up to me, yes you may. But, I'm not the one you should be asking that question. The general shifted his gaze to Naruto before he bowed and said, if you would have me, Naruto-sama. It would be an honor to fight alongside with you. Before Naruto could even answer, two more generals stood up before bowing to Naruto and said, if you would have us as well, Naruto-sama. We will be with you until the end. Naruto shook his head before he smiled to them and answered, the honor is mine, generals. And please, no bowing. The three generals straightened themselves up, before nodding to the blonde as their thanks. Sirzex smiled at his sensei, before looking to his audience and said, this meeting is adjourned, and good luck to us all. Taking it as their signal to leave, the generals filed out of the room, leaving the four soon-to-be Maos, Grafia, and Naruto. So, what about you two? Are you both going to stay here at the base? Asked Naruto, looking at both Serafal and Ajuka. Ajuka smiled at his sensei before answering, yes, Naruto. Me and Serafal will hold the fort while you three go down and dirty to win us our victory. Naruto chuckled before nodding his head to Ajuka and then looked at Sirzex, saying, despite your mission will be a walk in the park with you three on it. Looking at Falbium and Grafia, with the latter locking eyes with him, Naruto added, please, be careful. And watch each other's backs, got it? Sirzex smiled at his blonde sensei and best friend, before answering, we will, Naruto. A smirk formed on his face before adding, besides, with the training you have been giving us since the day we asked for it, I doubt there's anything that could surprise us. Shaking his head, Naruto looked at Serafal and said with a mischievous grin, and Serafal, please behave while we're gone. Serafal puffed her cheeks before answering in whining tone, Mo, Naru-tan. The four guys chuckled while Graphia still has her stoic face on full display. Just kidding, Seraphal, said Naruto before patting her on the head, to which Seraphal blushed slightly on the sudden contact towards her. Looking at the others, he added, "All right, come on guys. Let's get ready for our mission." Opening the door for them, Naruto let the four friends out first before gesturing Graphia to go next. "After you, my lady." Graphia gave him a small smile before answering, Era, such manners." Walking out of the room, Naruto followed Graphia out before closing the door. Naruto and Graphia walked back to their room in relative silence. Arriving at the latter's room, Graphia was about to enter her room when the blonde suddenly spoke, "Please take care of yourself out there, okay?" Looking back at her companion, Graphia saw the concern and worry on his eyes that made her heart beat faster. "I will, Naruto, you too, okay?" Naruto smiled at her warmly before answering, "I will." Nodding her head, Graphia turned on her heels before entering her room and closed the door. Hearing that Naruto walked back to his room, Graphia muttered to herself, "Please, be safe, and come back to me." With Naruto. After mobilizing their forces, Naruto and the three generals head for their target, the Loyalists' main base of operation. While a forward operation base was being erected, Naruto made a few clones to scout on ahead of the base to assess their strength. To his surprise, it wasn't that defended like he assumed it to be. Thinking that maybe they were just lax in their defense, Naruto pushed through with their attack. Looking at the three generals, Naruto asked, "So, you guys ready?" Before looking at the walls that surrounds the enemy's main base, Naruto could already see the defenders scramble on the wall to position themselves. One of the generals spoke, "We are, Naruto-sama. We'll begin the attack when you're ready." Naruto nodded before taking a few steps forward from his army. Looking back at the three generals, Naruto said, "When the wall falls, begin the attack." The three generals nod their heads before Naruto looked back the wall and took a deep breath. "You ready, Kurama?" asked Naruto to his longtime partner. "As always. Now, let's destroy a base," answered Kurama before Naruto's other tenant suddenly spoke, "If you need me, partner, I'm always ready." "That you do, D-Drake. That you do," answered Naruto, before going into his six-path sage mode. Being the new Jubi Jinchuriki, his six-path sage mode changed as well. Rather than being in its signature colored gold and black, his cloak changed to the color of black and white. To complete his look, 9 truth-seeking balls were orbiting behind him, to which he can make when one is lost or destroyed. Extending his arms forward, Kurama's visage manifested around Naruto before, with the help of Kurama, positive black chakra and negative white chakra in an 8:2 ratio formed on the opened mouth of Kurama's visage to make a Biju bomb. Gathering the enough energy to destroy only the walls, Naruto released the Biju bomb that rocketed to the wall in mere seconds before a deafening sound was heard and then a blinding light emerged from the explosion. When the dust settled, a large chunk of the wall was blown to pieces while the defenders were thrown off from the top of the walls, either dead or severely wounded. Looking back to the three generals, Naruto commanded, "Begin the attack." With Graphia, Circex, and Falbium. Graphia, Circex, Falbium, and their selected soldiers arrived where the supposed main supply line's depot was located. Looking over the base, Circex commented, "Just like Naruto said, this will be a walk in the park." It seems that their forces were sent to the main base to defend it, judging by the lack of guard detail patrolling. Looking where the supplies were held, Falbium stated, "And there's our target over there," pointing where he was looking at. Graphia and Circex looked at where he was pointing before Falbium added, "Circex, you and Graphia take some of our men and destroy that depot while I'll take the rest and act as decoys." Both Redhead and Silverhead nodded their head before taking some of their men to get into positions. Falbium looked at the remaining men before saying, "Come on, we have a job to do, guys." A collective, "Yes, Falbium-sama," was heard before he led them to the far side of the base to start their operation. Back with Naruto. Naruto led his forces inside the base with considerable resistance, coming from the loyalist devils. Spearheading the attack, Naruto managed to plow a straight line into heart of the main base of the loyalist devils. Flush out any opposition inside this base. If they surrender, capture them and bring them to me afterwards. If they refuse, you all know what to do. Commanded Naruto before blocking a sword strike over his head, using one of his truth-seeking balls that changed into a Chikuto, before kicking his would-be attacker on the stomach that launched the poor bastard straight onto the far side of the wall. The soldiers closest to him responded with a collective of, "It will be done, Naruto-sama." Before relaying the orders to everyone. Looking at the rows upon rows of barracks that he could find, doing the necessary hand signs before saying, "Mokuten, Jukai Koten." Slamming his hands on the ground, the barracks he was looking at was suddenly uprooted by trees before being consumed by the ever-growing greenery. Making a handful of clones, Naruto ordered them to help with the attack before backhanding one of the loyalist devils that tried his luck in killing the blonde sage. Assist the others. Capture anyone that surrenders. The clones nodded before heading out to do what the original commanded. Looking at his surroundings, he couldn't help but feel that this was all too easy. That there's something wrong about this operation. Almost as if they are walking into. Shaking his head to flush out those train of thoughts, Naruto proceeded to disarm, maim, kill, or dismembered any poor saps that was over in their heads in thinking that they could take down the blonde sage. Unknown to him, he wasn't the only one who is feeling that there's something wrong with all of this, and they are walking into a trap. With Graphia and Circex. Graphia, Circex, and a handful of their soldiers have finally managed to infiltrate the supply depot. Minutes of their insertion, Falbium begun his attack on the far side of the base to focus their attention on him, so that Circex and Graphia's team could infiltrate without any opposition. The duo and their men began planting explosive tags, courtesy of Naruto, in key points of the supply depot. All they need to do after planting the explosives was for them to activate any of the seal, preferably, the nearest one to the exit, before the timer on all the planted seals will begin before it will explode. While they were planting the explosive tags, Graphia, as well as Circex, couldn't help but feel on edge. Like this was all too easy for them to accomplish. If they were honest to themselves, they felt that they were in someone's trap. And just like that, an ominous voice was heard throughout the depot, solidifying what they were feeling. What do we have here? We have traitors in our midst. Circex and Graphia narrowed their eyes before muttering at the same time, Rizvam Levon Lucifer. And there he was, Rizvam Levon Lucifer, floating near the ceiling of the depot. But he is not alone. Along his side, were the other Maus, Cateria Leviathan, Creusuri Asmodeus, and Shalba Beelzebub. Looking down on the red head, Rizvam said, "Ah, Circex, it's so nice of you to visit." Shifting his gaze to Graphia, Rizvam added, "And the silver-headed bitch of a traitor is also here. My, this day has been going so well." Circex, Graphia and the others got into their battle stance before the former spoke, "Rizvam, please. Let's end this now. If we continue this, there will be nothing left of our race." Rizvam could only chuckle darkly before answering, "Bah. Save me from your pacifistic way, Circex. We're devils. We're on the top of food chain. Not the fallen angels. And certainly not the angels. If we combine our forces now, we could rid the world of angels, fallen angels, or any race that's not devils. The survivors will be slaves. We will rule them, Circex. We will rule them." Circex sighed tiredly before saying, "You're a madman, Rizvam." Rizvam smirked darkly before answering, "I take it as a compliment." Suddenly, the door of the depot was blasted inward before Falbium and the remaining men he have ran towards them and spoke hastily, "Circex, it's a trap. All of this is a trap. The bulk of the army that's supposed to be at the main base is here. We show." Falbium was cut off when Circex suddenly spoke without looking at him, "I know, Falbium." Raising an eyebrow, Falbium followed where Sirzex was looking before his eyes widened when he saw the 4 mouse hovering near the ceiling. Shit, muttered Falbium. Rizvam and the other mouse dropped from their hovering position before landing on the floor. Looking at Sirzek's group, Rizvam said with a smirk, "What now, Sirzex? You're trapped. There's nowhere else for you to go." Sirzex narrowed his eyes before he spoke to his men, saying, "All of you, retreat. We're going to hold them and cover your escape." One their men suddenly shouted, "But, Sirzex Sama. He was cut off by Falbium, saying, "No buts, soldier. Go. We got this." The soldier was about to answer back, but the glare from Graphia was enough for them to hightail out of there. Raising one eyebrow, Rizvam said, "Oh. What's this? Are you going to fight us, Sirzex?" Sirzex didn't answer, but he flared his power of destruction to make his point, along with Graphia, who flared her own ice magic, making the room drop a few degrees every passing second, and Falbium, who released his demonic energy to the maximum. Rizvam sighed before motioning for the other mouse to power up also. Looking at Graphia, Rizvam said with an evil smirk, saying, "Oh, by the way, Graphia. Your sister misses you so much." Sirzex and Falbium eyes widened before looking at Graphia. Graphia's ice magic suddenly spiked after hearing what Rizvam said, freezing anything from where she stood before shouting, "What did you do to her?" Rizvam's smirk widened before answering, "Oh, nothing much. Since the last time our resident interrogator visited her down on the palace's dungeon, she's been sleeping cozily for some time now. And that did it." For the very first time, every control that Graphia had on her emotions broke before rushing at Rizvam in hopes of impaling him. Sirzex was about to stop her from attacking, but Graphia was faster than him, thanks to Naruto. "Graphia, wait." Looking at Falbium, he added, "Come on, Falbium. Let's help her." Falbium nodded before rushing the 4 mouse with Sirzex. Rizvam and the other mouse dropped to their battle stance before saying, "Come. And let's get this party started." And all hell broke loose after that. "We have taken the base. We have won," shouted one of the soldiers in Naruto's army. Looking around him, the base was razed to the ground. Bodies of loyalist and anti-Satan faction devils littered everywhere. Looking at his 3 generals, Naruto nodded at them when they nodded him. Walking up to them, Naruto asked, "What's our situation, generals?" The one on the middle answered, "The base is ours, Naruto-sama. We sustained substantial number of casualties, but it was all worth it." Naruto shook his head before answering, "That may be, general. But still, casualties are casualties." Looking at the general on the left, he added, "How about our prisoners? How many did we take?" Gesturing for the gathered chained devils, the general answered, "We captured about 1/4 of the occupying army here." Looking back at Naruto, the general added, "If I may, Naruto-sama. But why did we even capture them? They support the current mouse. If they were the ones attacking, they wouldn't even take us prisoners if we were defeated." Naruto looked at the prisoners before answering, "Simple, general. They were forced in fighting this pointless civil war." Gesturing for the general to look back on the prisoners, to which the general did, Naruto added, "Look at them in the eye and tell me that you can't see it in their eyes that they didn't want any of this." Looking back at the general, Naruto added once more, "That's why I offered them to surrender. To give them a chance to escape this hell of a war." Looking at the dead loyalist, Naruto concluded, "The ones who fought us, those are the ones who support the current mouse. Those were the ruthless, vile, and scum of the devil race." The 3 generals were flabbergasted. The 3 of them didn't know that there were devils in the army of the loyalists that didn't want to fight. That wants to join them in the fight against the current mouse. If it weren't for Naruto-sama, they would have slaughtered them all. They wouldn't have spared them no quarter. As one, they thought on the same time that if he was a devil, and rule alongside Sirzex and the others, they would follow him. They will be loyal to him. And they wouldn't have it any other way. Naruto was about to order them to pack up and return to base when a soldier suddenly ran up to him out of breath. Naruto recognized the soldier as one of Graphia's lieutenant in her battalion that attacked the main supply depot of the Loyalist Devils. Remembering his name, Naruto asked, Kenji, what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be with Graphia, Circex, and Falbium to attack the supply depot? Taking a deep breath, Kenji relaxed himself before answering distressingly, Naruto-sama. It was a trap. The supply depot, the intelligence, everything. It was all a trap. Naruto gripped his shoulder before saying, slow down, Kenji. What do you mean? What's going on? Looking directly on Naruto's eyes, Kenji answered, it was the Mao's Naruto-sama. All four of them. They were waiting for us. Widening his eyes, Naruto looked at the three generals and said, that means this base. They turned the base into one giant bait for us. They took the gamble that at the very least, Circex, or one of the leaders of the anti-Satan faction will lead the attack on the depot. Looking back at Kenji, Naruto asked, where's Circex? Where's Falbium? Tightening his grip on Kenji, to which Kenji grimaced at the force of the grip, Naruto added. Where's Graphia? Taking a deep breath, Kenji answered with a downcast look, We were ordered to retreat by Circex-sama and the others. They hold them off for us to escape. Releasing his hold on Kenji, Naruto focused on sensing Circex and the others. But to his horror, he couldn't feel them. What the hell? I can't sense them. One of the generals spoke, oh no. If Kenji speaks the truth, then it's the work of Kateria Leviathan. Naruto tightened his fist, unconsciously releasing some of his power that was so dense and concentrated that the very ground he stood, shattered before shouting, son of a bitch. Looking back at the three generals, Naruto added, generals. Hold the base until I returned. I'll be going to support Circex and the others. You three are in charge now. And just like that, Naruto disappeared in a swirl of crimson lightning. Making the three generals and Kenji hope that Naruto arrive in time. Naruto arrived at where the main supply depot of the Loyalist Devils was located. Looking over the base, could see that almost all of the soldiers that was occupying the depot were converging on the main supply depot. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto sensed Circex, power of destruction fluctuating inside the structure. Kurama, we're up, said Naruto to his longtime partner. Nodding his head, Kurama answered, let's go. Taking it as his K, Naruto jumped from his vantage point atop of a hill before landing at the back of the advancing Loyalist army. Activating his Sage mode, Naruto made the horse hand seal before taking a deep breath and said the name of the technique that would make the legendary Madara Uchiha proud. Senpo Kaden. Goka Mekyaku. And just like that, a literal sea of flames was let loose from the very mouth of the enraged blonde sage that covered over half of the main supply depot, vaporizing any devil that the flames came in contact with. While this was going on the outside, Naruto's tenants were at awe at what Naruto released. Especially the new tenant that was residing inside of him. Amazing, if I were still alive, I could have mistaken my new partner as a dragon in human form, said Didrag, while watching his blonde partner lay waste on the Loyalist Devil's base. I know what you mean. The first time we saw this technique, it was used by one of the founders of our partner's village against the allied shinobi forces. Said Kurama. How did they counter this technique if I may ask? Asked Didrag to Kurama. That's easy. What better to counter a literal sea of flames by a literal wall of water? Answered Kurama with a smirk. And the sea of water was conjured up by one man as well? Asked Didrag again with a raised eyebrow. No, it took almost 10 shinobis that mastered the technique that can conjure up a wall of water. Answered Kurama. Didrag was about to answer Kurama as well, but was cut off when the latter suddenly spoke, he's done. Now, to take care of the remaining pests. Didrag nodded before shifting his gaze from Kurama to what Naruto was seeing and continued to watch what the dragon's new partner would do next. Back on the outside, Naruto was running towards the depot while dodging, parrying, or slicing any poor bastards that was brave or stupid enough to attack the blonde sage in hopes of stopping him. Dodging to the left, Naruto backhanded the offender using his right hand with such force that the devil that attacked him flew straight to the next devil that was supposed to attack him next. Twisting his body, Naruto followed through with a spin kick that hit the next attacker on the face, breaking the offender's neck on the process. Grabbing the dropped sword by the recently dead devil, Naruto sliced the neck of the closest loyalist devil before using Gakido to absorb the incoming spell attacks. After absorbing the casted spell against him, Naruto extended his arms out sideways before muttering, Kakudai Shinra Tensai. Literally, like the name suggests, instead of pushing anything at the direction the user wants, it expanded from the epicenter where the user stands, uprooting and destroying anything from a 1 kilometer radius. Paying no mind at the destruction around him, Naruto continued his run to the main depot. He entered the depot and was about to confront the Maos when he saw a familiar red-haired devil, lying on the ground, beaten, bruised, and bleeding, with some of the loyalist soldiers scattered around them, dead. Looking ways away from Sirzex, Naruto found Falbium with the same injuries as Sirzex, with the same amount of bodies he took down before passing out. Taking a knee, Naruto put his right hand on Sirzek's forehead before using Onmyoten to heal him from his injuries. Making another seal-less clone, Naruto nodded to his clone before doing the same thing with Falbium. Sirzek stirred from his unconscious state before his eyes snapped open, his power of destruction swirling around him, and was about to attack the person right beside him before his eyes widened when he noticed it was his sensei and close friend who was beside him. Sirzex averted his gaze towards Naruto before the latter asked, Sirzex, I'm here. What happened? Where's Grafia? Sirzex balled his fist when he heard the last question. Still not looking Naruto's eyes, Sirzex answered, Rizvam. Rizvam and the rest of the Maos happened. We held them off as much as we could, but the three of us, against them, we could do only so much. The blonde was silent. Sirzex could tell that the blonde was angry. No, he was livid. But it was not directed at him. Then his sensei asked again, Sirzex, where's Grafia? Mustering the courage to look at his sensei, Sirzex looked at Naruto on the eyes before answering, they took her, Naruto, they said she will pay for her crimes, and they will have her sister watch what they were going to do to her. For a moment, the blonde was silent. Naruto just looked at Sirzex, but the latter could tell that he wasn't focusing on him. His blonde sensei then closed his eyes before the very ground he was sitting on cracked and the whole complex was shaking. Sirzex, for the very first time, almost faint by the sheer force and killing intent that his blonde sensei was releasing. Even Falbium, who just woken up after healing from his injuries, felt that he was going to black out again from what Naruto was releasing. After a few more seconds, the shaking stopped and both Sirzex and Falbium could breathe again after the feeling of their sensei's unbridled, unfiltered killing intent. Naruto then stood up from his position before turning on his heels and walked out from the depot. Sirzex and Falbium looked at each other before the both of them ran to Naruto to catch up with him. When they caught up with him, the former asked, Naruto, where are you going? Without looking, Naruto answered that made both Sirzex and Falbium feel a cold ran up to their spines. What should I have done the moment I arrived in this universe? Both Sirzex and Falbium looked at each other before Sirzex asked again, you mean, he was cut off when Naruto suddenly spoke, I stayed my hand in finishing this war in favor that you four will be the ones who will finish this by training you four to surpass the current Maos. The two friends looked down in shame when they thought they failed their sensei. But was surprised when Naruto added, and I'm proud to say that it was all worth it. Sirzex, as well as Falbium, tightened their fist before the latter spoke, but we failed, we let them get away with Grafia. Naruto shook his head before answering, you may have been beaten, but in return, you both also saved your men. The two of them widened their eyes before the blonde added, all of your men safely got back. The blonde stopped walking before looking back at them, adding once again, both of you didn't notice but it took them hours before they reached me and told me what was happening. Both Sirzex and Falbium widened their eyes before the former stuttered, why you mean, we were fighting for hours. Naruto nodded his head before explaining, the both of you held on for hours before you both passed out. Not only did you fought against 4 Maos, you also fought against some of the soldiers that entered the depot. Sirzex looked at his opened hand. They were fighting for hours. Never in his life did he imagine he could fight the 4 Maos, as well some of their soldiers in the span of hours. Sirzex shifted his gaze to look at Naruto, he then bowed his head from his waist in a 90-degree angle before saying, "Thank you, sensei." Falbium followed his example and said the same thing as Sirzex, "Thank you as well, sensei." Naruto gripped their shoulders before making them stand straight and said with a smile, "You're welcome." His face gained again a serious look before adding, "Sirzex, you both gather the rest of our army and rendezvous on the main base we attacked earlier." Sirzex nodded before he smiled and said, "So, it's time." Naruto nodded before answering, "Yes. They leave me no choice but to act." Turning on his heels, and Naruto was about to leave when he suddenly added, "We're ending this war once and for all." And just like that, he disappeared within a swirl of crimson lightning. Sirzex looked at Falbium before saying, "I don't know about you, but I almost feel sorry for the 4 poor bastards." Almost. Falbium raised one of his eyebrows and asked, "Why is that?" Sirzex could only shook his head at his friend before answering, "If you were always awake and not sleeping your off, you would have noticed it by now." Judging by his silence as his K, Sirzex summarized in one word, "Graphia." Falbium's jaw dropped comically, before saying, "No way, I thought you called dibs on her." Sirzex laughed before motioning for his friend to follow and answered, "I did. But this past few months, I already saw that her heart has already been taken. And I'm happy for them." He then looked at his friend with a goofy smile and added, "Besides, you heard Rizvam. She has a sister." Falbium could only sweat drop before he shook his head at the redhead's answer. Sirzex then activated his teleportation circle before saying, "Come on. We have a war to win." His friend nodded his head before joining the redhead inside the glowing magic circle before disappearing in a flash of light.